Abhay, let's get started. I do not, all I'm going to say is Abhay is one of the founders of what is called InMobi now. And I don't want to be doing his introduction because I think that's what we're going to talk about. The session is Harbinger of Change. And, the way I want to run this session is where, you talk about yourself, okay? And my questions are framed like that. So, today InMobi is a hugely successful company in the space it is, and a unicorn, Abhay. So, my first question to Abhay is, and we'll try and bring you all in for questions, but here we are looking at encouragement from Abhay for, aspiring entrepreneurs in this room. Abhay, tell me, what was your childhood like, your pre-InMobi days? What had you thought you would be doing in life professionally?
Yeah, Hoshie, thank you for having me. And building a startup is something like the experience that we just went through. You try until it works. So I'm glad that we were able to make it work. My childhood, I think it's a general, usual middle class family boy growing up in North India with lot of aspirations of the family behind him. I was the elder boy of the house, so certainly I think everybody expected a lot of out of me, and uh, that kind of drew me to become generally the most obedient person who kind of went through to fulfill his father's aspirations all the way through the college. Um, but then I think college was the first time where I did realize that it is not really like college was the time probably when I got my true freedom at that point in time. And this was back in even 99, 2000 when computers started to come in. IIT had provided open access to internet in the rooms. And truly this small boy from Ghaziabad, his world opened up in the ways that he hadn't imagined. So for me, my entrepreneurship journey started at the year of my college, Hoshi, when I won a business competition, and that was also purely due to accident. I happened to be passing the room of my co-founder, and then he was struggling with some things, and I happened to help him, and that's when my entrepreneurship started. So in fact, upon graduation, I moved to Kerala from Kanpur, and then I started my very first startup back in 2001 in the space of education tech. And that startup until about 2007. And then, as they say, when you get nothing from a startup, you get a lot of experience. So I was experience rich, but in every other way poor. By the time I came out of the first startup in 2006, 2007, and then we started InMobi. So I think last 22 years been part of only the startup journey out of India, which has been just an incredible 2 decades in the last 20 years.
So, so there was some inclination to be an entrepreneur right from college days, and you did a lot of it. Tell me, when you started M Coach, that's what InMobi was called earlier, correct? What is
That's
it?
correct.
Technology. I've spent a lifetime in the tech media space, but one never saw what all technology, or foresaw that technology is going to be a life change. And today, InMobi is a business that totally is dependent and works around technology. What was MCoach, and did you even envisage that what you started, what was it that was started at that time would become what it is today?
If you look back 15 years and try to think of the simple principle with which we started, the principle at that point in time was that we wanted to make people get the deals on their phone from their neighborhood. So it was kind of very similar to Groupon before Groupon was ever invented in the world, and that too on SMS. Mind you, we are talking about pre-iPhone, pre-Android, pre-app era. BlackBerry was still an aspirational device. Nokia still was cool, and Moto Razr I think, the ad had just come out of Motor Racer. So I'm probably making us all sound very dated, but it is just to drive home a point that 13, 14 years have changed this industry dramatically. But what has not changed is, I think, the consumer's aspirational to connect with the technology. And that is one thing that has remained constant. If anything, we've been more dependent on technology than ever. And if anything, we demand more from technology than ever. And that has sort of remained true as far as mobile and its usage is concerned. And that is how InMobi happened. We first saw SMS, and SMS were not doing well because short codes and telco influence at that point in time was just really, really toxic for the industry. But what came out is, even in a 2G bad handsets, which did not have a screen, India was still the second highest mobile web consumer in the world. Second highest. And that's crazy because this was the time when data was still expensive. We were still in 2G. And so we saw that. We hard pivoted to do mobile web advertising. And then iPhone happened and apps came and the world hasn't looked, same ever. But that has been the constant thread for us over the last 15, 17 years.
So you evolved as the consumer requirement kept changing, and you all foresaw that. Is that correct? Or were there some things
That's
that...
correct. And in fact, one of the key things that I've sort of learned over the last few years is that the only thing that an entrepreneur has in his or her favor is the speed to change. And that is also, conventionally the hardest thing to do because, once you're set on a path, you're like, how do I change? So it's a bit of a dichotomy that your advantage is the speed and your Achilles heel is also your demand is stability. So somewhere I think how do you continuously juggle between the two has been probably one of the biggest learnings in the last decade and a half.
Awesome. I really want you to share with us what you can, obviously on record. What have been your top 2 or 3 challenges? Were there times that, you wanted to just give up and kind of stuck it on? This is, to inspire people who have, the reason I'm asking you this question, who have started, who are facing a tough time. So, what is it that you can share in terms of challenges, weak moments, and, how you overcame those?
I think every day has been a challenge. So I would say that, in fact, even today morning, today night when I went to sleep and woke up in the morning, I always think that we won't have anything to do tomorrow morning. So, there's a bit of paranoia that I have learned to live with personally. But interestingly, if you look at our journey, there have been, I think, 2 or 3 very critical moments for us that have defined us in the way and manner that has remained very true with us forever. I think the first instant for us was when we made the hard pivot of our business from SMS to BAP, and that happened within probably 8 months of the company. We were, 99% of our funding was done. We had less than 1% of the funding left in the bank. We had no way of being able to get the funding back again, and our business model wasn't working. So how do you do a hard pivot at that point in time? And mind you, we were all coming in from, different backgrounds. My co-founder, left his Harvard degree and then came back to India. My other co-founder was a very successful product guy and tech guys. So we were a good team. And that team sort of stuck around and made the change to a new business model almost overnight. But then you had to go for Series A funding. We couldn't have gone again for seed funding because otherwise there would be too much dilution. So how in the next 3 months, we literally reshaped the entire business and made the business ready to be a Series A funding business is probably one of the biggest stories of being scrapy. The second story that I must share with all the people in the room is the story of our global aspirations. it's easy to say to be global, but it is incredibly hard to be global. And towards that, InMobi is right now in probably every country in the world. But the most inspirational story that I tell a lot of people is about our entry into China. In fact, even our board at that point in time, and we had somebody who was very, very close to Google. That was the time when Google actually was coming out of China back in 2011-12. And InMobi decided to enter China. Till date, we remain probably one of the only global companies that is successful in mainland China. In fact, I'd say this with a lot of pride that we are probably the only Indian company that takes money out of China, versus a lot of other people who take Chinese money to grow the local businesses.
I think some
So
people pause. Some people want to applaud you for that. I think all of us want
yeah,
the money from China.
it's been a story of dare, and it's been a story of dare that I continue to remain proud of till date. And the third biggest story, and it's not so much about giving up Hoshi, but it is about truly realizing what the value we are creating. In fact, we now run global businesses. I have an executive team that reports into me. There are about 16 of them. Average number of years that those executive team has spent in InMobi is 10 plus years. For a company that has only existed for 15 years, to have half of those people spend 10 plus years is an unparalleled feat. And I think somewhere we did realize that if we have to build this business and if we have to do the transformation that the industry needs to go through, we have to really, really take our people capital with us. So a lot of entrepreneurs who come and say that, oh yeah, if I throw enough money, I can always replace talent. To them, I say, you cannot, you just cannot, because you may be able to replace talent, but you will never be able to replace attitude. And that attitude is what makes startups startups. So I think that realization happened very early in our journey, and that has remained a constant for InMobi over our entire journey, and will remain a constant throughout our life.
I have two follow-up questions. Okay. The people story is very, very great, right? And maintaining people, especially when there were other startups coming, there was the technology boom happening. One is, how did you kind of retain people? Was it again a money thing? Or, you said great attitude. And the second thing is, in a business where the technology was changing, people had to adapt to different skills, okay? So, let me very quickly say, Bangalore's known for, the software and the Y2K work, but people who did the Y2K and Euro conversion were not relevant after 2007, 2008. Even technology people, if they don't upgrade themselves, become irrelevant, and there are always new people available in the market. So you said you held on to people. Was it easy to, one is, were they held on to by money, stock options, all of that? And the second is, did you all reskill them? Did you find it better to actually hold on to people in situations that you were, or rather replace them? It would have been easier to replace them with younger, lesser expensive talent.
Yeah, and I have a number of stories that I can talk about. In fact, the person who is just innovating right in InMobi, there's a person who was our first employee that InMobi started, and that its story is incredible. The person was actually selling dongles on street in Bombay, and we just I don't know what we saw in him, but that person became an InMobi employee. And that person today, right now, sitting out of New York, is innovating to change the retail media industry in the world. So, our belief is that people are not static. Talent is not born, or the people who say that inherently, in fact, for a long period of time we had a hiring philosophy, and we still do, that attitude comes before smartness, comes before skills. But it is also incredibly hard to interview for attitude. It's easier to interview for smartness, and it is the easiest to interview for skills. And that is why most of the people end up liking others who have good skills. But the problem is that skills becomes outdated. Your smartness will make you reinvent, and your attitude will make you stay when the things are low. So startup needs people in reverse. Startup don't need people with high skills, less smartness, and least attitude. So it is to be flipped. So in fact, even till today, I must be interviewing. InMobi is now about 2,500 people between InMobi and Glance, and still between the founders, over a year we would be interviewing 100 to 100 plus people. Because the rest of the organization is very, very aware that we are always interviewing. And if we are not interviewing, then the organization sort of changes its mojo. And that is what we've done. Now, how do you retain people? Of course, compensation and stock option are big deal. You can't take that away. But what is more important is treating people as people, not treating people as machine. People demand respect. People demand there is a place in which they can grow. People are looking for working with other smart people. So I think, as a lot of people say that, people leave their bosses. But most of the time, we think that people are leaving for higher compensation. So somewhere, if you are not able to retain people, you should always look up and say, what's wrong in the hierarchy that people are not able to stay in the organization? And it's very hard to digest, because unfortunately, the people who are making the decision are also the bosses. So how can they step up and ever say that we made, that we are wrong in our approach? So it's an interesting thing, but I think InMobi has gotten it right, and we feel incredibly passionate about it.
Okay, you should take several bows because, unfortunately you're not here, but there are people clapping gently in the audience at some of the things that you're saying. So, kudos to you. My next question, and I think you answered quite a bit of it, is what would you say were the three key success factors? At least, people for InMobi to reach where it has reached today, to become a good, solid, stable company. People you've spoken about would have been a key success. What were the other two things that, or if you want to give three things that took InMobi to where it has been, from where it was to where it is now? Sorry.
Yeah, I think the three key. I'm sorry, I have a lot of somebody is talking continuously in the mic, so
Prashant.
Okay.
Please don't talk there, it's reaching him. Go ahead.
So the 3C, if I hear your question right, Hoshie, you wanted to know what are the three key success factors of anybody who succeeded in InMobi. And I would say that, without fail, for us, the three success factors have been, one, the attitude with which somebody is coming in. Second, the smartness that you are bringing to the table. And the third is the empathy with which you are able to lead. And those have been three things that have been woven into our culture, up till the last level. And these three things are universally true. They're not only true for India. We've hired people in China. We have a pretty large team that works out of the US. We have people in London, where I'm sitting right now. So these three values cuts across the globality, in the world. And somewhere I would say, as Indians, we are probably predisposed to few of them, just out of the virtue of the environment in which we have been born and we have brought up. Our family upbringing, I grew up in a joint family, so our family upbringing in a joint family probably teaches us empathy when we were still in cradle. Our ability to be able to scrape and finding things through are important, as a startup in early days. I'll tell you, one of the things that have been hard for us to learn is how to scale through process, and how to scale through systems, and how to scale through, making things consistent. Something that American companies are exceptionally good at. They are exceptionally good at taking emotions out of systems and trying to scale things dramatically. And that was a harder thing for us to learn. And I'm glad that we've been been able to learn it. But while learning this, we have not given up these three core values of attitude, smartness, and empathy, which has been the bedrock of it. Because whenever you're hiring new talent, whenever a new leader is coming in, they always look for ways and means to associate. Look at some of the other examples, companies that have done an exceptionally good job on their culture. But look at Netflix, and you've seen the great stories come out that all it took is for a company like Netflix to have 2 or 3 down quarters, and suddenly you are seeing people just leaving the organization, and so on and so forth. Or Amazon, which had an amazingly good pay culture, but suddenly as their stock started to move away, suddenly the compensation structures have changed completely. So my perspective is that a lot of what we see from the Western world are all extremely commercial driven, and there's nothing wrong in that. It's a good thing. But somewhere as a startup, I think we need to put the attitude, smartness, and empathy right at the top, and those are the 3 things that have kept us going and has allowed us to keep and grow the people within InMobi.
Thank you. Abhay, you're now a unicorn, okay? And I want to ask you a question and want a genuine response, and I'll set some context to it. Right now there is this news about 2 rich men in India. Now today I'm the richest. Today I'm the richest. Where I am, I don't think I'll see that kind of wealth, so it doesn't matter to me. Okay, and whether you have 90,000 crore rupees or you got $20 billion, doesn't kind of matter. But you're a unicorn now. I'm sure there is some level of pride. What does being a unicorn mean to you?
It doesn't mean anything. In fact, I've developed a bit of a, and I'm going to use a strong word, but I've developed a bit of a disgust for that word personally, because I believe it is distracting a lot of entrepreneurs from digging in and solving the problem. I mean, I'm sitting in 15th year of InMobi right now, and believe me, I have, we just finished a pretty strong, exciting, meeting with a lot of InMobians and external people yesterday, and I feel the same amount of goosebumps in my hand today as I did 15 years ago. But what has changed? I mean, back then also I was the same person. Today also I'm the same person. So this whole quest of putting a label of unicorn is good for social recognition, I would say, but probably it is detrimental to the company. And somewhere I think as founders, if we are able to put that in perspective, I think we'll all do a lot of goodness to ourselves and also to the potentially a new generation that is coming in, because we all have huge responsibility. We're the first generation of entrepreneurs who probably dare to dream. Of course, there were Mr. Murthy and Ajit Premji and Mahindras who changed the country in a different way. But these tech entrepreneurs are changing the country in a various different way. And if we don't set the examples rightly, then the next generation will grow up thinking, just having a label is a great thing. So being unicorn, of course, gives you the flexibility to do things that you always wanted to do. But doing things that you want to do is more important than having the label. So somewhere ask yourself this question, that are we really able to do things that we wanted to do, and are we really changing the world, is way more important than having a label. The thing that we are not proud of is that we're unicorn. The thing that we are proud of is that we were covered on the map of India in 2011, and then probably made few people dare to dream. And that is more important. That is my currency of pride that I sit with, rather than anything else. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great response. And that comes from someone who wants change. If you can predict the future, okay, which is continuously changing, and these days future is next year, but I'm going to ask you a question. Where do you see InMobi in 2025? Are you able to predict where you would be? In terms of solving problems?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh yes, we are. We are. In fact, I think uh, we've only we've only upped the ability to dream, because if there is anything that being profitable, being at the kind of scale that we are, has only given us more flexibility to dream big, and that is what we are doing. So, if I'm allowed to say so, just a couple of minutes about InMobi, right, we are probably building the world's uh, biggest media and tech company out of India, which will make people access content on their lock screen. So, in fact, I don't know how many people are familiar, but InMobi also incubated another company within itself, which has gone on to become a large global organization in itself, which is called Glance. So we've also innovated on this entire model of creating two large global companies, one in the space of B2B, another in the space of B2C. Uh, and both are working, hand in glove with each other, yet both are very different in their, approach and cap table and investors and so on and so forth. So I believe that InMobi is on a path to be on billion plus devices with consumers, accessing various different forms of content and information within themselves. So somewhere what made InMobi big, we will be disrupting that from Glance itself. And if we don't disrupt it, then somebody else will. So somewhere I think we are able to see our future very, very clearly. Now, how we will get to that future is part of execution. Now, I may reach through this path, I may reach through this path, I may have two downturns, I may have no downturn, it's all fine. But where we are headed has been, is clearer than ever. And not only to me, not only to Naveen, not only to our co-founders, but to 2,500 InMobians that are really, really behind us on this mission.
Good. Wish you lots of luck with that. Let's come back to speaking a little bit about you. You spoke about your past and growing up. What's your current family like? And do you think there's anything like work-life balance? Does it exist? Work must be very demanding. Work must be.
You ask an
Okay, go ahead.
question. In fact, you ask an interesting question, and I'll tell you probably, personal changes in the last 5 years, and I firmly believe in that. I think the most expensive thing a man can buy is divorce. So it's one of those things that you really, really don't want to go for. And most of the startup entrepreneurs, and me included, in the first decade, I thought that my life is going to happen when my startup is going to finish. But then during the journey, I realized that, startup is probably never going to finish. In fact, you don't want it to finish, because if you want it to finish, then you're in the wrong place to begin with. So you have to realize that this is part of life, but life is going to happen as you are building the company, and that required some mental shifts. Not only for me, by the way, for a lot of people. I have two kids. Both my kids have grown along with the company, and I have a wife, I have a mother. I lost my dad recently, but very interestingly, what I have now managed to figure out is how do I spend time with them, or my wife, and so on and so forth. I'll give you this one example. It is very weird example, but something that I did which had probably the highest impact in InMobi. We were having a pretty large team meeting or team offsite, and I was supposed to be there. Of course, I mean, Naveen was also there, but I was also supposed to be there. In fact, everybody in the company expected me to be there, and that was exactly the same week when I had planned my vacation. Which was unknown to me. My wife had planned that vacation. It was a surprise vacation. Now I was faced with very, very strong choice. Do I go in my company offsite with all my leaders who are flying globally, or do I uphold this whole surprise vacation that the wife has planned for? Abhay 10 years ago would have made the decision to go into the meeting without even blinking an eye. Abhay of last month took the vacation. And not only took the vacation, but Abhay last month even stood in that team meeting in front of everybody and said that I have taken vacation. And believe me, I think that had probably the biggest impact in front of the team. So probably what we are trying to say is that it's okay to take vacation. It's okay to be human. It's okay to be. It's okay to shed a tear. It's okay to be faced with tough choices and sometimes prioritize. It's okay to do so. And that, I believe, starts right from the top office. Because if at the top office we don't emulate, then we're not going to be creating a society that puts family first, a society that puts human values first. So I have personally gone through the change. I know, hundreds of other InMobians have gone through the change, and their productivity, if anything, Hoshie, has only doubled. It is not reduced. So they are happier, they are more content, and they are performing at their peak right now. So to those of us, or those of who you will say work-life balance is hard. Yes, it's hard, but gold is really at the end of the rainbow here. So go through that path, and it's useful. It's useful to do so.
Wonderful. My last question before I open it out to the audience. Abhay, what do you do when you're not working? Hobbies, passion, how do you de-stress? I do. I'm a very big watcher of these comedy shows. Stand-up. So you pick up any stand-up comedy show, and I would have watched it. I watched a lot of plays. So in fact, I'm spending time in summers, and I'm found in Ramsharda almost every weekend. Last play that I saw was Einstein by Nasuddin Shah. Brilliant play. Of late, I've started to read a lot of books. There are books regarding connecting spirituality with material gain, or connecting breath with meditation. All the things that possibly we found 10 years ago, we would have found too fluffy and too emotional or too soft core. I think those are the things, I probably realized over the last 5-7 years that those are the things that have far higher value in being able to make one a holistic person. And this is also true because, by the way, as many of our leadership team members are also growing, they're also going through the similar challenges in their own lives. Somewhere, I think anything that we do has become a harbinger of change for a lot of other people in the organization as well. So we now have a resident, I won't even call it psychotherapist, we have a resident coach in InMobi. And I was the first one to be coached by her for over a year and a half. And then she has gone through and coached, I think, about 200 of us over the last 3 years. And so those are the things. And I did realize that most of the time we are stressed because we are maintaining two different phases, one personal life and one professional life. If we are able to merge the two phases, if we are able to be one, I think life becomes much less stressful. And that is what probably I've discovered, or has been probably my biggest discovery in the last few years. Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Prashant, is there a mic? Any questions here? Please identify yourself, your company, and then the question, please. There's a question there, Prashant.
Hello, I am Sheshadri from Aditya Birla Group. My question is, there is a skill lacking amongst Indians. Do you collaborate with any of the educational institutes for upskilling those students so that they come up to the standards of the world level?
So, first of all, I do believe that as Indians, we have skills and capabilities at the world level. Otherwise, as Indians, we wouldn't have been the CTOs and engineers in large global organizations. I believe what we lack is the context and the belief that a lot of those organizations place on Indian talent. And this has got to do with probably the exposure in the education system. This has got to do with the opportunities that are given to them. And this has also got to do with probably the family system that India has had, where we've been followers for a long period of time. So to address your questions very specifically, I mean, this is a very long question, and I can I can talk about it endlessly. But very specifically, I think we're working with a number of different education institutes. My own alma mater, IIT Kanpur, my co-founder works in ISB. Number of places where we are actually deploying industry education institute collaboration programs, whether it is regarding data sciences or whether it is regarding the artificial intelligence and machine learning, and bringing in the opportunity from the world to our talent. I firmly believe that people have the talent; they just need to be given right environment and right problems to work at, and needs to be given an environment where they can fail and not be judged. And all of those things are incredibly hard. I mean, we fundamentally judge people very quickly. We have less tolerance for failure, and we just never give the kind of freedom that people need to become their best self. So some of those things we are doing with education institutes in collaboration with InMobi.
Thank you.
Sir, my name is Vijayan. What will be the next advertising innovation that you will be bringing out?
So if I heard your question correct, what will be the advertising innovation that we will build up?
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
So one of the things that we are, we group with the app ecosystem. There are about 4.3 million apps in the App Store between iOS and Android. But yet you see, I think everybody in the room can probably count apps on their fingertips that they use on a regular basis. So 4.3 minus 10 apps do not have much traffic at all. So somewhere an app ecosystem that was built to really grow the developers in the way it means that the developers should have grown has become extremely concentrated. And this is coming from us who has built InMobi all around the app ecosystem. So we've seen this hugely up close, and then came the world of super apps and so on and so forth. So our belief is that this whole app ecosystem is archaic, and if there is anybody, it has only benefited large walled gardens and operating systems. And we can fundamentally break that by bringing the power of content onto the surfaces itself, by bringing the power of content on the lock screen and many other surfaces where you don't need an app. In fact, there is a big study which says that getting a Hollywood blockbuster, you have a higher probability of getting a Hollywood blockbuster than getting an app successful. And that's the world that we sit in. So we are, in fact, working on bringing in a big consumer platform right on the lock screen of the consumer, through which people will be able to engage with their favorite content. And of course, there will be advertising innovation within that. So I'm not worried about advertising. Advertising is something that we know very, very well. What we are all focused on right now is building a global media tech company from India, which it's like TikTok came out of China. I want to be, 5 years from now, I want to be able to say that Glance came out of India, which literally put India on the map of global when it came to consumer internet.
Thank you. One last question, sir.
Yes.
Please identify yourself.
Sure. Hi, Abhay. My name is Chandrasekhar. I'm the co-founder of Trashin. We're a B2B marketplace for recycling. Thank you for sharing your inspiring story. I had a question based on one of the points that you mentioned some time back. I recollect you mentioning that one of the challenges for Indian startups while they scale is to build right systems and processes. Since we are in the journey of transforming from a seed stage company to a Series A venture, and we are in that growth phase right now, I would really like your feedback on how we can build the right culture and processes to enable us to grow rapidly fast. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll look you up, but you're doing an amazing business, my friend. If you're making India trash free, I think it's hugely inspirational. But if you were to choose between culture and process at the stage at which you are in the company, I would say kick the processes out of the window and only worry about the culture of the organization. Process will take care of itself. As the business scales, processes will come, or your people will find the ways to making you scale. As an entrepreneur, you should not worry about that even a single bit at this stage. The thing that should occupy almost 100% of your time are the three things. One, do I have the right product market fit? And they are not in any order. They are whatever. Do I have the right product market fit? Do I have the people with the right attitude? And have I created an environment where people want to work with each other? If these are the three things I have been able to do so, then it does not matter whether you are in the business of doing X or in the business of doing Y. Even if you need to do a pivot at some point in time later, your team will not let you die. Because ultimately that team will then come up and say, look, because as a founder, we're the leaders with smallest rudders. Anything that we say has to be executed by the team underneath, and there are a lot of issues that happen. So you actually want to be in an environment where you have literally an undying following within the organization. So I would say that at the stage at which you are, and I don't know too much about your company, but if you're at the stage at which you are, do not worry about process, systems, scalability at all.
Noted.
And it'll be hard. I mean, the VCs will talk to you about operational metrics, and they will say how you will bring operational efficiency and so on and so forth. So I understand those pressures. I'm not the one who hasn't gone through it. I get those pressures. But again, that's what you need to balance. But if, within yourself and your team, only three things. Do I have a product market fit? Do I have the people with right attitude? And do they love working with each other?
Sure.
Are the three things that you should focus on.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I think we're done, Uday. Don't throw me off stage. 1 minute. Abhay, I loved my discussion with you. Extremely, inspirational journey. Wish you lots of luck for the future. As I mentioned, I didn't think you heard what I said, that you should have taken multiple bows, because there were random, applause happening in the audience with some of your statements. But I'm sure the crowd will, give you a big round of applause now. Thank you.